Hey, everybody, welcome to the channel. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. We started in 1985 and we're still going to this day. The same campaign this entire time. I'm your host, the Game Master. And if you've never been here before, this video is an excellent jumping on point. This is the beginning of what is the current era of our game. So, to really quickly tell you a little bit about our game world and what came before this, I feel like there's two big ideas that are probably going to affect it more than anything else. The first is that this is not the DC universe, nor is it the Marvel universe. It is our own world that we've created. It's supposed to take place elsewhere, somewhere out there in the multiverse. And it's a world where crossovers happen. So the Marvel characters and the DC characters all coexist. And the reason we do that is we have some players are a fan of Marvel, some players are a fan of DC. By doing it this way, kind of everybody's happy. The other thing that we do that most people do not do is we use real time. So, for instance, in 1938, which in the real world was the first appearance of Superman, in our game world, 1938 is the year that Clark Kent Sr. started going by the name Superman. Likewise, in 1939, in our game world, Bruce Wayne Sr. became Batman. And years later, we did the Crisis on Infinite Earths in the mid 1980s. And so, for instance, the son of the original Superman with Lois took over, and then he was our post Crisis Superman. So we go through the years and we see characters are born, they get older, they follow in the family business and become superheroes themselves, right? So with this game, this is really the first time I'm going to be talking about uh Clark Kent the third and Bruce Wayne the third. And this game was inspired by a comic book series called The Super Sons. And that's why I say inspired. It's not that we are running that comic book, because in that comic book, Superboy is John Kent, who is the son of Lois and Clark. And then Damian Wayne in that is the son of Batman. So while we are lifting certain ideas from those comics that we wanted to have happen in our universe too, um, we are not following every detail slavishly. You know what I mean? So so yes, our Superboy now is Clark Kent the third, the grandson of the Golden Age Superman, right? Our Bat Boy is what we call him. We decided to not make him Robin. Bat Boy is then Bruce Wayne the third, who again is the grandson of the Golden Age Batman. Also here, we have Aqualad. He is the grandson of Aquaman and Mira. We have Joker, which we got the idea from the Super Sons comic. I'm going to talk more about him in a minute. In the comic book, they refer to him as Joker Jr., even though he actually is not related to the original Joker at all. Um, and then we've got Barry Allen the second. He is the son of Dawn Allen, who Dawn's dad was the original Barry Allen, who was the Silver Age Flash in the 1950s. In the center here, we have Rex Luthor with an R. Again, he is something new. He's from the Super Sons comics. I will explain him shortly. We've got our new Martian Manhunter, who is John, and then he is the grandson of the original Martian Manhunter. And then I already mentioned Clark Kent the third. He's in the bottom left-hand corner of our channel art for this one. Uh, Hal Jordan the second is is in the bottom center row there. He now also is a Green Lantern or a Teen Lantern, I guess we'd call him at this point. His mother is actually Jessica Jordan, who was the daughter of our Hal Jordan. And then last but not least, of course, we have Diana, who is our new Wonder Girl. And, she is obviously named after the Golden Age Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, who in our world married Steve Trevor. And they had daughters, named Stephanie, aka Stevie Trevor, and Hippolyta, aka Lita Trevor, who went on to become a character called Fury. But at any rate, that's not really anything you need to know for this specific game. So what came before is there was this big event called Blackest Night, where there were a bunch of zombie Black Lanterns, basically. And we had a massive, massive, massive zombie apocalypse happen. We also ran an event called Marvel Zombies at the same time. And so between those two events, the world needs a new generation of heroes now, right? So that's what happens in this game is we find out first of all that with the exception of Joker Jr. and Rex Luthor, these kids exist. Oh, and let me say something else too. Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff. Um, we have told stories about her over the years, and a big thing for her was as she looked around and saw the world changing around her, she didn't like what she saw. She thought the world was always getting worse, that we were in a state of social decay, basically. And so, something that she kept saying when we would show her in our game is she kept saying the phrase, I wish things were like they used to be. And so, what we had decided was that subconsciously, she's tapping into her superpower, which is to alter reality and to influence the world around her. So, one of the reasons, for instance, that the parents of all these kids felt this subconscious urge to name them these names, right? Is she is kind of putting the world back together again, right? Everything is kind of course correcting. So even though these kids were not all born in the same year, because she has wanted this same thing for decades, um, she influenced their birth, so on and so forth. And as always, I say this all the time, but when I'm a game master and we're playing a game in my living room on a Saturday afternoon, it's a back and forth between me and the players. So I'm used to people asking me questions, and then I realize something I said was unclear, so I clarify it. I always feel a little kind of off balance when I'm doing the YouTube thing because I'm explaining the game without any input from you guys. So if I'm doing a bad job at explaining, which I do plenty of, just leave me a comment in the comment section and I'll do my best to clarify or to do a better job of explaining. At any rate, So it turns out in the Fortress of Solitude, which for us is at the North Pole, and this is the old school Fortress of Solitude, right, from back in the day. In here is this cosmic artifact that Superman had put it in here for safekeeping. He has quite a bit of things along those lines in here. But this is called the hypercube. And it's the object that we see in the very center of the picture here for this week's channel art of Rex Luthor, holding this glowing golden cube. That's the hypercube. And boy, this is actually really complicated to explain. So the hypercube is aware, it's a living object, and it is sort of omniscient in a way. So it perceives everything everywhere, right? So without a physical body, it has been forced to be a passive observer of the events of the universe as they unfold around the cube. And basically, it's a fan. It has rooted for the heroes in the past. It has its favorite villains, that it thinks are more interesting than the others, so on and so forth, right? And so we get to this moment where, like I said, Blackest Night happened and the world needs heroes. So for the first time, the cube wants to go from just being an observer to being an active participant. So the cube actually creates two beings just out of thin air, right? So one of them is Rex Luthor. And he is patterned after Lex Luthor, of course, but a kid. And then the other one is Joker Jr., who is, of course, loosely inspired by the Joker. But as the story unfolds, we find out that these two characters actually represent opposite sides of the same coin that is the mind of the hypercube. So Rex is actually the villain, right? And he's also more powerful physically. Joker Jr. is actually more like the embodiment of the hypercube's sense of like guilt or regret or anything like that, right? And so because of that, then Joker kind of wants to interfere with Rex's plans if he can. But so at any rate, Rex Luthor ends up going to this prison planet where it's called Tacron Galtos. And so all these different races throughout the universe, which by the way, we refer to our dimension as Earth K. And that's K as in Kent. But at any rate, so all these different alien races, and it doesn't matter if they're DC or Marvel or anybody, right? A lot of them take sort of the worst of the worst and they send them to this planet. So Rex Luthor goes there and and the planet, by the way, is kind of like Cybertron from Transformers. I'm a huge Transformers fan, so you're going to hear me referencing Transformers quite a bit on this podcast. But at any rate, you know how their planet is like a metallic world, right? Everything is some sort of a machine, right? So Rex is able to take that machinery apart and rebuild it into new machines that can give the powers of famous villains from Earth to these criminals here. So, for instance, there is a girl who's one of the prisoners here. She's a criminal, and they give her the powers of Doomsday. Um, and then not only the powers, but also the appearance. So that when all is said and done, she's got gray skin and the white kind of spiky bone stuff growing out of her, so she'd have like the claws power and stuff like that. But you get the idea. Rex Luthor, because he has the mind of this like infinite, cosmic object, right? He's able to do all sorts of stuff you'd think is impossible. So, for instance, when he makes a new Sinestro, it's pretty easy for him to throw together a power ring and give this guy, right? And so then what happens is he makes his own what is basically the Legion of Doom, right? Like from Super Friends. And so they go to Earth and start causing problems. And so in response to this threat, the kids, and by the way, they're all kids at this point in our timeline, and by the way, that's going to change. These guys are all going to grow up, right? We're going to go year by year through the timeline. But at this point in time, which is 2011, which is when the new 52 comics hit, right? That's when we set this event and we say that, Aqualad, Batboy, Kid Flash, Martian Manhunter, Superboy, Teen Lantern, and Wonder Girl, they get together, they form a team, they fight these guys, and of course, it's a role playing game. So we used the actual character sheets of the respective characters. We just dialed it down a little to make it seem more like kid versions of each of them. And they fought, and the heroes won. So the bad guys are sort of vanquished into space at the end of the adventure, and of course they're going to return. They're going to be reoccurring villains, but for right now they're beaten. And now Earth, how do I want to put this into words? It's sort of like the world was depressed that the old age had ended, right? And now there's this glimmer of hope. And so it's common knowledge. They don't know what people's secret identities are. Like they don't know that I don't know that Kid Flash's real name is Barry, right? They don't know that, but they are told that these are the legitimate sort of like bloodlines of all of these legacy characters. And while this is obviously a very Justice League centric story, it's happening with kids from other teams too. So for instance, in tomorrow's video, we're going to be talking about the X-Men, and they are the children of, of the previous X-Men, stuff like that. But I feel like, especially for anyone who is new to the podcast, and this is the very first video that they're ever hearing from me, I feel like I've kind of hit you with a lot of information, and I don't like for these videos to be super long. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for being here. We have an awesome community here, by the way. Uh, we would love it if you chose to subscribe. Um, Make sure you smash that like button while you're at it to support the channel and leave us a comment. Let me know about you. Do you like role-playing games? Maybe you play Dungeons and Dragons or something, and that's what brought you here. Maybe you just like comic books or cartoons or, whatever. I would love to hear all about it. Tell me about it in the comments section. And from everybody here, on my end, who is associated with the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. We hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.